My name is Philip Hensley, and my topic for my video 2 submission is botulism. So botulism is defined as a rare but serious paralytic illness caused by a nerve toxin that's produced by the bacterium Clostridium botulinum, and it's sometimes caused by strains of Clostridium butyricum or Clostridium baridae, but there again it's most commonly associated with Clostridium botulinum. So the botulinum neurotoxin is considered one of the most potent lethal substances known to man, and as little as about 1 nanogram per kilogram has been proven to be lethal to an individual. And scientists have estimated that about 1 gram could potentially kill 1 million people. So there again, if you get about 6 to 7 kilograms of this stuff, you could potentially wipe out the whole entire human population. The neurotoxin enters nerve cells and eventually interferes with the release of acetylcholine, so the nerve can no longer stimulate the muscles to contract. So in a sense, it paralyzes the nerve. And unless the nerve can regenerate a new axon that has no exposure to the neurotoxin, the interference at the neuromuscular junction is permanent. So unless you treat this right away, the effects of this can be permanent. Clostridium botulinum is a gram-positive, rod-shaped, spore-forming bacterium. So spore-forming meaning it's heat-resistant. It is also an obligate anaerobe, meaning it is killed by normal atmospheric concentrations of oxygen, and it's only able to produce the neurotoxin during sporulation, which can only happen in an anaerobic environment. So there have been 7 types of the botulism neurotoxin designated by the letters A through G. Only types A, B, E, and F cause illness in humans. The other types, C and D, they cause illness in some mammals, but just they haven't been proven to cause illness in humans. A, B, and E are associated with foodborne illness, while type E is specifically usually associated with fish products. Clostridium butyricum has been known to produce type E toxin in some cases, and Clostridium baridae has been known to produce type F toxin in some cases. There again, it's just not as common. So the gold standard for determining which type of toxin you have is a mouse bioassay, but the genes for A, B, E, and F can now be readily differentiated using quantitative PCR. So that seems to be the number one choice now, whereas there again that gold standard was, and I guess still is, that mouse bioassay. So Clostridium botulinum, it usually inhabits soil with pH varying from 6.25 to about 7.5, so barely acidic to rather alkaline or neutral. It's widely distributed in nature and is assumed to be present on all food surfaces. The optimum growth temperature is within the mesophilic range, so about 20 to 45 degrees Celsius. And in spore form, it is the most heat-resistant pathogen that can survive in low-acid foods and grow to produce toxin. The growth of the bacterium can be prevented by high acidity, so an acidity that is less than 4.9, but it really gets slows down the growth when it's below 4.6. You can also have a high ratio of dissolved sugar, high levels of oxygen, very low levels of moisture, or storage at temperatures below 3 degrees Celsius. So pretty much freezing food, or getting it to 38 degrees Fahrenheit, which is almost freezing. Many foods are canned with a pressurized boil that achieves high temperatures above 100 degrees Celsius that makes it sufficient to kill the spores. Because foodborne is one of the main concerns with botulism. So there again you can just make sure that food has a lot of dissolved sugar. Maybe it's highly acidic. Can it with high levels of oxygen, or you could freeze dry it and get all the moisture out. But also you can you can store it at a temperature above 100 degrees Celsius for more than 10 minutes, and that should be sufficient to kill those spores. So there are five types of botulism. There's foodborne botulism, which is caused by eating foods that contain the botulism toxin, which there again it's present on most food surfaces, and the most frequent source is home canned foods prepared in an unsafe manner. There's also wound botulism, which is caused by a toxin produced from a wound infected with Clostridium botulinum, and injection drug users are at increased risk for wound botulism. So people who use like street drugs and things like that. There's also infant botulism, which is caused by consuming the spores of the botulinum bacteria, which then grow in the intestines and release toxins. So there again, it's common in soil and dust and things of that nature. So infants are at a high risk. There's also adult intestinal toxemia botulism. It's a very rare kind of botulism that occurs among adults by the same route as infant botulism. Typically, adults have a better resistance or immune response, I guess, to the botulism toxin or to that particular type of bacteria. There's also iatrogenic botulism, which can occur from accidental overdose of botulinum toxin. So this is where we see people who receive like Botox injections, and maybe the dose was too high or something, and there you have the accidental overdose. But all forms of botulism can be fatal and are considered medical emergencies. So like if you think that you may have contracted it somehow, or someone take them to the emergency room right away. Symptoms include double vision, blurred vision, drooping eyelids, slurred speech, difficulty swallowing, dry mouth, muscle weakness, and for infants, you can see lethargy, poor appetite, constipation, weak cry, or poor muscle tone. And if left untreated, these symptoms may progress to cause paralysis of the respiratory muscles, arms, legs, and trunk. Symptoms generally begin 18 to 36 hours after eating a contaminated food, but they can also occur as early as 6 hours or as late as 10 days, so that the time range really varies. Tests for botulism toxin and for bacteria that cause botulism can be performed at some state health departments, laboratories, or also at any CDC center. So treatment involves respiratory failure and paralysis that occur with severe botulism may require a patient to be on a breathing machine or a ventilator for weeks or months, plus intensive medical and nursing care. Can also be treated with an antitoxin if it's found early, and this would block the action of the toxin circulating in the blood, but you really have to catch it early to use that antitoxin. In foodborne cases, some doctors surgically remove the contaminated food still in the gut by inducing vomiting or by using enemas. And in the case of wound botulism, you can also remove the surface of the toxin-producing bacteria, followed by administration of appropriate antibiotics. So there you have that, and then doctors and scientists are kind of in the making of a vaccine. It's currently being investigated, but there's no vaccine commercially available or that has been approved by the FDA. But then again, it is being researched and looked at as of right now. Prevention for foodborne botulism, just follow strict hygienic procedures to reduce contamination of food, which include like carefully following instructions on safe home canning, including the use of pressure canners and cookers as recommended by the USDA. All that can be found online at the USDA website. Keep oils infused with garlic herbs refrigerated. Keep potatoes which have been baked, in the oven or on the grill, wrapped in aluminum foil. Keep them hot until they're served or refrigerated. Boil home processed low acid and tomato foods or canned foods in a saucepan for 10 minutes before serving, even if you detect no signs of spoilage. So when you're making spaghetti, make sure to keep it hot, or to cook it essentially for 10 minutes. Um, Prevention of wound botulism: promptly seek medical care for infected wounds, and by not using injectable street drugs. Um, Prevention of infant botulism is particularly hard because the bacteria that causes the disease is in soil and dust. Dust is everywhere, and infants don't really have a high uh, immune response to it, so they can just breathe that in. Um, it can be found inside homes, on floors, carpet, and countertops, even after cleaning. Typical places where you find dust. Children younger than 12 months old should not be fed honey because honey can contain the bacteria that causes the botulism. There again, not as relevant in anyone over 12 months or out of that toddler range, because they have increased immune response. So they usually don't even get that from eating honey. Um, put all the bad things aside. Um, the botulism toxin also has some beneficial effects if you dilute the purified botulism toxin. And it can be used for treatment of migraine headaches, neuralgia, spasticity, or involuntary muscle tightening, especially in the neck area, excessive sweating, overactive bladder, eye twitching, teeth grinding, and probably most popular is the appearance of facial wrinkles, which is only temporary. But I mean, you see a lot of cosmetic surgeons that make fortunes off of using Botox. I'm not going to say it's a bad thing, but you just need to make sure that you go to someone experienced, before you inject that, because it can be potentially fatal if you have an overdose. And that's all I have. And you can use this for future educational purposes. Thank you.